In the following videos, we are going to create our very first test case for the RESTful Web Services project we have created. And we've created this project using Maven, and we have a familiar structure here. Here's the source folder, and this folder contains different packages that we have created. These packages are organized into three main layers, and our first layer is user controller. So inside of this user controller class, we have the mappings for different methods. Like we have a post mapping for a method that is called create user, and this method accepts HTTP request and then calls the business logic, which is inside of our service layer, to create a user. And we have a get mapping for a method which is called get user, and this method accepts user ID and returns back user details. We will also test this method as well. And then the main business logic we have inside of user service, and user service is an interface which is inside of service package, and then inside of the implementation package we have the implementation of this user service. For example, for the get user details, here we use Spring Data GPA, and we have a user repository which looks up user details by their email address and then return it back as a user data transfer object to our REST controller. And in the following videos, we will test this class and this method as well. So let's begin with writing unit tests for user service implementation class. And if you look at the structure of a project, it is organized into two main sections. The very first section is called source main Java. It contains all your Java sources and the packages that we have created. And there is another one right after the resources, which is called source test Java. So this section here will contain all the packages and the source files for the test cases that we're going to write. We already have a sample package here, which is exact match of the root package that we have, com apps developer block app.ws, and we have the same name here. And by default, we have one test case created here, which is an integration test. It is just an example. If we run it now, it will be a successful test because it doesn't test for any conditions. And if we do not assert and do not test conditions, by default, the test will pass. But it is an integration test. It will bring up entire Spring context, but at this moment, we don't really need it. We'll create a very simple unit test that will test one method in our service implementation class, and that method will be the get user. And then we will take a more advanced example and we will test the create user. We are going to test this project using JUnit framework, and it's important to make sure that we have a dependency on JUnit framework added to our project. We have created this project with Spring Boot and Maven, and when we create projects with Maven, we get this POM.xml file added to our project. And if I open my POM.xml and then switch to XML view, I have different dependencies here organized in starter projects. So I have the Spring Boot starter web, and then we have a starter for Spring Data GPA, and so on. And one of the starters that we need to add is for the testing framework. If I scroll down all the way here, I have a dependency that is called Spring Boot Starter Test. So this dependency adds testing frameworks to our project, and then Maven will go and download all the libraries that are needed for testing Spring Boot applications for us. Maven will download the JUnit itself, and it will download Hamcrest and Makita framework that we will be using to mock objects for our unit tests. And for us to be able to use JUnit and Makita in our project, we will have to make sure that this dependency is added.